Hi guys, my name is Smit and I'm super excited to start this series with you all and share this entire journey with you. The name is MBA Conversations with Smit. So what I'm going to do is I'm studying at Masters Union, doing my MBA right now, and we have a cohort of 202 very smart, intelligent students. So I'm going to call each one of them on my podcast, understand from their work experience, share their learnings with you, and all the business lessons which we have been learning at our college will be at your disposal in very simplified version. I am sure that if you stay with us in this journey, you're going to learn a lot in the simplest way possible. So stay tuned, subscribe to my channel, and here we start with our first guest today. And I'm really happy to invite him, Shashwat Gautam.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thanks a lot, Shashwat, for being here. So, just to give you a background, Shashwat has 2 years of work experience in a debt financing company. So, today's podcast, we're going to understand how the world of debt financing actually operates. We're going to understand the nuances of it, break it down in terms of the analysis of company to actually securing a debt to the returning of debt. So, we're going to focus on these three aspects today, and I am sure by the end of the 30 minutes, you will gain a lot of insights. So, Shashwat, hi.
Hi Smith, how are you?
Really happy to have you here. So, would you first tell our audience that how is this world of venture debt actually divided into? So, what are the different components you will maybe distribute venture debt into?
Okay, so let's make it clear. Venture debt is a different sort of an instrument. So I would say venture debt actually lies somewhere between equity and a loan. We will not be covering venture debt in this podcast, so we should go ahead with debt. So if we try to classify debt, there could be different parameters on which we could classify it. So one could be the timeline of borrowing. So if the tenure is very high, it could be a long-term debt. If the tenure is short, say a working capital requirement, it's a short-term debt. The other classification could be based upon security. So have we provided a collateral to secure that debt, or is it an unsecured debt? So no collateral is there per se for the particular debt. So let's start with long-term and short-term, and then we could discuss secured, unsecured,
Sure.
because that is a part of all types of
So, I
debt.
think today in the class we're discussing about the messy way of distributing debt. So, I think if you can cover that, it would be very helpful for all of us who are beginners in the debt financing world.
Correct. Actually, doing a MIFI for debt is not that easy because there is a lot of intersection. So if we think of it in a way that, say, this is a particular instrument and this is generally secured in nature, but you will find instances where that is also unsecured. So MIFI.
So, what is secured and unsecured? If you can, let's start with that.
Sure. So a secured debt is wherein I, as a financier, is providing you the money, and I need certain guarantee. Like in case you are not able to repay me back the money, then I will be selling off that asset of yours. So let's take example of a home loan. So if I'm giving you a 1 crore home loan, so that home itself is my collateral. In case you default,
Okay.
I'll be selling off that asset, and the money that I get from the proceeds, I'll be using it to take my principal amount back.
Okay, and then what is unsecured debt and why do we need unsecured debt?
Right. So unsecured debt is essentially what the name implies. So it's a loan wherein there is no guarantee, there is no collateral associated with it. It's generally, I would say, shorter and like smaller in ticket size, and working capital loans and all these types of loans are a lot of times unsecured in nature. Because, like, say the business is generating revenue worth 10 crore,
Right.
and they need maybe a 20-30 lakh of a credit line. So in that case, that's easily doable, right? That's not a lot. It's like 2% or 3% of the total annual turnover.
Okay.
So in that case, it's not a very high risk investment for a bank or an NBFC, and they will happily provide an unsecured debt.
So let's say now we have secured and unsecured debts.
Correct.
So under secured, if you can divide it into 2-3 components, and under unsecured, if you can divide it into 2-3 components. And as we were discussing today, we also had a speaker, by the way,
Right.
who had come and she was talking about invoice-based debt. So I think that will come under unsecured.
I would say not exactly. That's why I
Or
said
secured. Huh.
no. So I would say that the MIFI way of doing things might not apply
Okay,
within the
okay.
secured unsecured parameter. So I would rather like to do it short term and long term.
Okay.
So that's
Go
the
ahead.
proper MIFI for debt. So if we talk about short-term debt, and just to be clear, right now we are only discussing business loan. So we are not discussing maybe individual loans which we take, say a home loan or a personal device loan.
So this is only for business organizations and companies, full-fledged companies.
Correct, correct. So let's, for now, let's keep the discussion for business loans only. So when we talk about the tenure-based differentiation, number one is the short-term loan, number two is the long-term loan. Now, within short term, there are these working capital requirements that companies do have. So, different companies, because of the nature of operations and the nature of business that they have, might have different types of requirement.
Okay.
So, say I supply to multiple big stakeholders, multiple big companies. I have clients like, say, as big as Tata, Reliance, Adani. In that case, I am generating an invoice on a periodic basis to them. So I'm providing my services and I want payment back. So I'm generating an invoice. So one very common type of financing is invoice discounting.
Okay, got it. So let's say these are all these multinational companies who would have X amount of suppliers.
Correct.
So an invoice would be generated by the supplier for these multinational companies, and let's say you come and pitch in and say that out of these 100 rupees, if you bring it down to 99, then the difference you will be paying, and the money directly goes to the supplier. So the supplier is happy and the company is also happy. So have I explained it correctly, or there is some modification?
Right, you're almost there. I'll just get into a bit of detailing and we'll just explain it with a better example.
Okay.
So suppose I'm a t-shirt manufacturer, right? And I sell t-shirts on Amazon. And Amazon gave me an order of, say, 5 lakh t-shirts.
Okay.
Right? And each t-shirt will cost me 100 rupees. Right? So on Amazon, like Amazon owes me 5 crore rupees on that invoice. And that 5 crore Amazon will not pay me on the day they place an order or on the day I generate an invoice, right? So I will provide them the services, but I actually need working capital to even manufacture it, right? Like 5 crore worth of t-shirts, I will at least need say 2.5 or 3 crore if my gross margin is say 40-50%.
Fair enough.
So where am I getting that 2-3 crore from? That's the question. So generally for a business, the way is that once they generate the invoice in the name of Amazon, they go to a financing company, which might be an NBFC, which might be a bank, or which might even be a fintech. Like there are a lot of fintech companies coming up, Credax, Record Club, BridgeUp.
Okay.
So you might go to one of these fintech companies and you will show them that this is the invoice that Amazon will pay me after this cycle. Say the cycle is of 2 months. So after 2 months, Amazon will pay me 5 crore. Now, what they could do is they could tell you that, okay, fair enough, I'll provide you 4.5 crore today instead of the 5 crore. And you could manage your working capital requirement with it. And then from that 4.5 crore, you will earn whatever profit you have. Like say you spend 3 crore on your cost of goods sold and other operations, then you might end up making 1.5 crore and the bank makes that 50 lakh ka difference. So that's the thing.
Got it. So this is example of invoiced based debt.
Correct. Right. This is bill discounting or invoice discounting as we call it.
Okay.
There are other instruments in short term as well.
So before we go to the other instruments, for invoice based discounting, for people who are completely new here, why cannot they approach a banking institute? Because, or let's say any larger organizations, and here we are taking example of Amazon, which is a very trustable organization. But when it comes to certain smaller players, do you think taking that at the same, let's say, commission would be doable? So I'm asking you 2 questions here.
Right. So let's first talk about at the same commission or at the same interest rate. I think
right.
you are implying. So no, it's not doable.
Okay.
So interest rates, in case of an invoice discounting instrument, differs from company to company. Like for which company are you generating that particular invoice?
Okay.
So if I generate for an Amazon or the likes of Adani, Tata, the interest rate will go down, say to a 12% or a 13%. But if say I'm generating it for a little bit less trusted company, but a very big company, say a Zomato or a Swiggy, then it might go to 15-16%.
Okay.
And say if it's a normal company worth 500 crore but nobody knows, then it might go as high as 18 or 20%.
Got it. So
and this is the annual interest rate I'm talking about. So what you will be charged will be cyclic. So if you are taking the money for 2 months, you will be charged 2 by 12 in that sense.
So it depends on the nature and the, let's say, the credibility and the past track, like how almost all loans are. So based on
Definitely.
certain metrics which would be there for a specific company, if it passes all the metrics, then based on that the interest rates would be classified.
Exactly. Like instinctively, if you think of it this way, how likely is Tata to default?
Yeah,
Right. So
impossible.
it's very close to a risk-free investment. And the theory of corporate finance is that on a risk-free interest rate, you charge a risk premium, market risk premium.
Right.
And because you're taking that risk, so you would want more of return on that particular investment.
100%. So that's okay, fair. So we have answered the second question. Now, what about my first question? That why can't banking institutes intervene in this process? Because for them, this is very easy, and the capital which is required is also not a great amount in terms of most of the cases. So, banking intervention could be done, but then why is it not happening? I know at a surface level, you can tell our viewers why this thing is not being done by the banks.
Right. So, it's a very detailed question and demands a lot of time to properly answer it. But just to touch upon the question, number one, banks generally deal with, it's not the case, but they generally try to lend long term. So the borrowings, so long term borrowings are generally for capex purposes. So they are making up new plant, new factory, something of that sort. Bank would more happily do. If it's an invoice discounting or very customizable instrument, banks are generally not that keen on making customizations. So this is wherein the fintechs and other players come in. They make a platform, they do the customization, they do the credit rating, they make it easier for bank, and then banks disperse the money via these fintechs. So it's easier for bank as well. Think of it from a bank point of view. I'm bank, and I'm getting filtered lead. So this fintech has done all the credit analysis, all whatever data I need. They have done all the financial modeling, and I'm just getting the final lead. I'm just dispersing the money on one click of the button.
Got it. So fair enough. So I think pretty much clear about this. Now before we go to the next type of debt instrument, also one more question which is sort of bothering me. Do you think government intervention in such scenarios is needed? And I'm not very sure if you are aware of this fact, but how much regulations in terms of the Indian government specifically is it helping or sort of blocking this particular thing when it comes to MSMEs? Because that is one sector which I believe a lot of focus should be done, because those are the people who actually contribute a lot to our GDP.
Right. So I would say there is no right or wrong to government regulations in this case. Some of the regulations do make the life tougher. I have to agree on that. But mostly it is for the benefit of the people. So I would say recently in September of 2022, the FLDG lending was regulated by government.
What is FLDG lending?
Yeah. So FLDG lending is basically I'm a fintech platform, and I am taking some part of the risk on myself while I am getting the money dispersed via my lending partner, which happens to be an NBFC or a bank.
Okay.
So I take some of the risk, and in case of a default, I will also pay some of the money to the bank. So it's not completely onto the bank or the NBFC. I am also sharing the risk. So that is FLDG lending.
Okay.
And RBI actually regulated it to a certain degree. It was not banned, but the regulation is such that you essentially have to provide bank with data, provide bank with credit score and everything as a fintech, but it's up to the bank to take the final call.
Okay.
So it was a bit regulated because the credit rating is such a thing that it shows your track record, it shows your history, and it shows the chances of a future NPA, right?
Right, 100%.
And you can't play around with it.
Correct.
So no matter how much we try to say that we have to increase the access of credit, which is true, I agree that the more there is access to credit, the more businesses will grow. But there has to be some sort of a balancing mechanism wherein we are able to identify the risk and we are not rewarding players who are likely to default.
Okay. Agreed. I would buy this. Now, the question which actually is coming in my mind right now is more towards, let's say, all of us are talking about, building for Bharat and the smaller entrepreneurs, smaller companies, and not these multinational. I mean, they are definitely there in the growth journey, but if you want to focus on the real growth, we have to focus on these small companies. Now, right now, if you're raising an invoice against Amazon or Walmart, okay, a supplier of Amazon or Walmart, for example, that is a very easy task because you know that these two organizations are very credible and they will not default. But the minute you go down in this funnel, we would see that the smaller players, there is high chances of defaulting. It might be because of the intent or the external circumstances, and that is something which no lending company or would like. So if such a scenario happens, what are your views on the default pattern? How can we reduce the default pattern when we go down in the funnel to the smaller companies?
Do you mean smaller companies in terms of size, or smaller companies coming from, say, a tier 3 or a rural location?
Specifically tier 2, tier 3.
Okay, tier 2, tier 3, right. So, we have to acknowledge some of the things that goes on in the financial ecosystem. One of them is that it's very easier for me to get a lender for a client seeking money from a tier 1 city compared to a client seeking money from a tier 2, and then it reduces to a lot of degree for a tier 3 city. So while I was working for BridgeUp, I saw many instances wherein the company was decent enough. There was decent revenue, there was low leverage, and like all the financial parameters were being met, but we were actually not able to get a lender.
Okay.
And that happened because it might be from a tier 3, or the location might not be serviceable for a particular lender, or maybe for any of our lenders that were empaneled on the platform. So lenders till today are not very keen on financing these tier 3 or many of tier 2 locations, and this is because they don't have an office there, so they don't know what are the next action items in case of a default. They don't know how to recover the money.
Right.
And it's very difficult. Like imagine I have a bank headquartered in Mumbai, and you ask me to maybe go and recover money from a village in Andhra Pradesh. How feasible is that?
100%. I mean, yeah, there's no proper protocol in terms of a default, at a tier 2, tier 3 level. So, yeah, that's understandable. So, before we go down to your company experience, let's finish what we had started. So, one is invoice based debt. And revenue based debt. So, the types of debts which we're talking about. So, let's finish that and then move to your company experience.
Sure. So, invoice discounting or bill discounting is what we discussed. The second one, which is closest to invoice discounting, is a purchase order financing.
Okay.
So invoice is what we generate once we have done the work. Purchase order is what we get once we get an order. So it's even before that.
Yeah.
So purchase order financing is actually more difficult than invoice discounting because it's very prior in the process.
Right.
So like once we get the order, there is no hard guarantee that this entire thing will happen end to end. So that's the reason it's not very easy to finance such cases. But also it depends, like in case it's coming from a very reputable source, then it might be very likely to finance that particular case. Now coming to the third and fourth major type of short-term financing, that is the revenue-based and subscription-based financing. And a lot of hype is around these two instruments, particularly the subscription-based financing. So revenue-based financing, I would say, is nothing but a short-term debt, which draws its value, like how much I'm getting as revenue-based financing is a function of how much my revenue is. So suppose I'm a debt-free company in a hypothetical world, and my revenue is 2 crore. Then in that case, I might try for say a 30-40 lakh of revenue-based financing, 15-20%.
Okay, almost 20% of total revenue.
Correct. So that is the leverage these companies generally look for in case there is no existing debt. And in case there is already a debt, then it might become more and more difficult. And in case the debt is 20% more of the revenue or more than that, it's almost impossible to finance that company without any collateral. So this is all without collateral. Subscription-based financing is one of my favorite instruments along with invoice discounting.
Why is it your favorite instrument?
I'll let you know. So subscription-based financing, by the very name, is meant for companies with predictable revenue. Now think of it. Which type of companies have predictable revenue?
So predictable revenue would, so let's say who are into long-term contracts with their companies.
Correct.
And they are getting, let's say, weekly, monthly, or let's say whatever the quarter is. So for that, they're getting frequent orders, and they have some association with the company for a long period of time. So it could be either in commodities or certain FMCG companies. So all these, yes, I think that would be a subscription-based model can work in those kind of companies.
Right. So subscription-based is nothing but predictable revenue. They get say a ticket size of revenue on a monthly or a quarterly or on a semi-annual basis. And these companies are generally software as a service, or maybe edtech subscriptions, maybe OTT companies. So all these companies wherein you are making a monthly or a quarterly payment, these are all subscription based companies. They are getting subscription based revenue, and based on that revenue contract, we can finance these companies.
Got it.
So it's not on the total revenue that we are financing, that is revenue based. It's on a particular contract that we are financing. So I'll give you an example. I make this software as a service tool. I made this software as a service tool in a hypothetical world, and you are my client, and you pay me $1,000 every month.
Yeah.
So my annual revenue, if you add it up, 1,000 into 12 will be $12,000, right?
Yeah.
All the cash flows combined. Now, if I want upfront capital right now, what could I do? So I could go to a bank or a financing company or a fintech. I could tell them that, see, this is my condition. I have this client. So the financing company could offer you, see, you can take $9,000 upfront capital from me, and every $1,000 that you get in future will be routed to me via an escrow account, and then I'll be taking those cash flows. So what the financing company made was 12,000 minus 9,000
Got it.
over a period of 1 year.
Fair enough. So you took a name right now, Nescro account.
Escrow.
Okay. So what is that? What is that?
So escrow account is basically a mechanism wherein money is routed via a third bank account, not directly to the person providing the services, so that could be given back to the lending partner.
Okay.
So it's like a mechanism designed in banking so that the repayment of money becomes easier for the lender and risk free.
Got it. So I think till here our viewers would have understood how the world of debt financing works, and the types. I think you've pretty well explained it in a simplest way possible out there on internet,
Right.
for sure. So okay, now let's deep dive into your experience in BridgeUp. So you had been working there for, I believe, a year or so almost.
A year.
Right. So let's start with the basics, right? So number one is how did you approach the companies, or maybe how did the companies approach you? That's step number one. Step number two is the analysis part, and step number three is once the deal is sanctioned, then what are the, let's say, protocols which you follow? So let's focus on step number one. That how do you approach companies, or how do companies approach you?
Right. So, of course, in any business, there is this outbound and an inbound thing, right?
Okay.
So, in case of outbound, we know these companies via our network, via our partnerships, and we approach them. We see if there is any requirement for any sort of debt financing, and an instrument custom to their requirement we could offer them. The second and the most common method is inbound leads that come into our website. So this is via the ads that we run on Facebook. This is via LinkedIn ads, or maybe Google search engine ads. So these are the companies that search for, say, a subscription-based financing keyword or revenue-based financing keyword and land on the website, and then they put in their basic information.
So here you would have some competitors as well, right? Because if you talk about keywords, etc., so there would be some other companies also. Then how did you, let's say, overpower the existing competitors?
Right. So I would say this is more of a question from a search engine marketing point of view.
Correct.
Because like how you bid is not the only thing. Your ad should be relevant, your content should be relevant, like you have an ad quality score, and along with that you have to bid a lot of money to get that spot.
Right.
So it's a function of all of these factors.
So I think we leave that to the marketing side of the company. Fair enough. And also I forgot to inform our viewers that you have been working in the founder's office.
Right.
So that's a very prestigious position to even start your career with. So yeah, kudos to you for that.
It's been an honor, and I really appreciate the leadership of the company that they gave me the chance to work in the founder's office just after my undergrad.
Right. So so let's say working as in some other team versus the founder's office. So how was that experience? Because it's for every fresher or a new joinee, everybody wants to work closely with the founder. So was that experience? We're diverting a bit from the topic, but
Right.
would really like to know how that was.
I would say, in one word, founder's office is crazy. Like that 1 year was very much a learning experience, and at the same time, it was a roller coaster ride for me. So I got the opportunity to work across teams. So it was not just restricted to say if I'm doing analysis around investment or debt financing. I'll not just be restricted to that. I would also work with the risk team in assisting them with operations. I will also work with the marketing strategy team, discussing which geographies to target, where to run the ad campaigns, on what parameters, analyzing copies, and all those things. At the same time, being in founder's office, you have to take a lot of ownership. So you might end up defining a lot of your own work. So if you see there is this gap in the entire process, so you will also do business process optimization. If you think this tool is not relevant and we could automate this, you have to take the ownership and you have to do it. So it was a lot across a lot of functions.
Got it.
And I had the privilege to directly report to the founder on a daily basis. So that was a big learning experience for me.
Okay, that's awesome. Hopefully, a few of your viewers, will gain some insights and we'll be able to crack that founder's office role in the future.
Definitely.
Okay, let's come back to our original flow of discussion. So we've understood that how do you approach companies and how do they approach you. Now, point two. How do you analyze a company if they are relevant to your portfolio? Maybe you would have certain objectives or certain, your checklist that okay, these things or maybe this much cash or this much revenue or this much growth or this industry.
Right.
So you would have a certain checklist which you're looking for, and then you would analyze the company, and then based on the founding team and your relation, and based on what the market talks about the company. So there were a lot of variables involved in analyzing a company. So how was that process? And also if you can share some real-time example without revealing the name of the company in which you accepted an offer very quickly versus offer which you had to delay for a long time for XYZ reasons. That will give a very holistic picture of how this industry actually functions.
Right. So to start with the basic parameters that are analyzed in any sort of debt financing, regardless of what the instrument is in question, will be their last year's booked revenue, what's their EBITDA or the profit after tax, both these things. And along with that, we try to see what's the current leverage. So how much is the outstanding debt as of today? So if the company has taken say more than 20% of the revenue as unsecured debt, it's not feasible to finance the company because they will not be able to meet their obligations.
Right.
And no lending partner would be willing to finance that company. So debt, revenue, profit, and along with that, what the growth has been, how the past 2-3 years have been like, to check growth on not just revenue part but on every parameter. How the company has been, overall health of the company has been. Then we check the location of the company and the entity type.
Why is location very important here?
So there are these lending partners. So by lending partners, I mean the NBFCs or banks. They service only to particular locations.
Okay.
So say if it's a company from Mumbai, no lending partner would say that I'm not going to service this location.
Right.
But hypothetically saying if it's a company from Northeast or maybe a remote part in Jammu and Kashmir, it's not easy to get a lending partner to finance that place.
Fair enough. Makes sense.
So location is also a key factor in that. And amongst other minor factors, I would say, would be analyzing what entity type does the company have. So it could be a private limited, it could be an LLP or a partnership. So private limited gets the highest preference.
Oh, and so definitely. So I mean, when it comes to formation of company, private limited is preferred because of various reasons. But here in specific case, is it because of transparency which a private limited company gives you, and in terms of let's say the share equity, maybe that distribution is very easy to understand. Are those regulatory reasons associated with it, or is it on the business and operations part of it?
I would say it's a mix of both. So one reason is that a private limited company has a lot of legal regulations around. So they have to do the filings and all those things. So that helps the financier or the lending partner to check the financial health of a company in a much better manner. The second reason would be that whatever loan the founder took on his personal books, his home loan, his car loan, cannot be transferred to the company. So company is very separate from how the founder is in his real life.
Right.
So this distinction helps us establish a trust. So if the company's books are good, I largely don't care what the founder does.
Got it.
Right.
So then that's what you call limited liability. I think that's the term which
Exactly.
we use for private limited firms. Fair enough. Okay, great. So I think we've covered the analysis part almost to a, I would say, periphery level, but I think that's good for our viewers to even start thinking about this. Why don't you give us an example, let's say, wherein you had to reject a deal? Maybe some nuances if you can put it, because I think accepting a deal is very easy to understand, but
Right.
rejecting a deal is, I think, something which will give our viewers a bit of learning.
Correct. So I remember this one instance wherein we were not able to finally roll out an offer because of the client not having a permanent address in a particular city.
Oh.
So it was, I think,
Okay.
a rented office address or something of that sort, and the lending partner required a permanent address, and that was a blocker in that entire financing episode.
Man, I can never believe that a permanent address stopped a company from raising
That
debt.
was very strange. Like,
Okay.
even I was not able to digest it for some time.
Uh-huh.
But then I realized it might have something to do with the credibility of the company.
Fair enough.
And not just credibility, but also how much of assets do they have? Do they really own? So if it's a permanent address, essentially they own that, right?
Right. No, that's a very, I would say, very nuanced and very smart way to understand, and it speaks a lot about the founder as well. So yeah, fair enough, great. Okay, so the last segment, how does your operations change or function post a deal is sanctioned? So let's say I'm a company, I've approached you, you've given me, let's say, 50 lakhs of deal, and everything is done, the scrutiny is done, you've accepted, the partner is also willing to proceed. Then how does this work? So let's say I have 6 months of period, 1 year of period, and how do you keep a check on me? So how does that process work?
Right. So, first of all, a term sheet is rolled out to you. Like, once we feel that this is a good enough company to proceed, and our lending partner feels the same, after our due diligence, credit rating, and everything, then a term sheet is offered to you. And that particular term sheet that you get, you are free to accept or reject it, right? So, if you accept that term sheet, you get the money dispersed from the lending partner's account, and once you get the money, the repayment starts from next month. So suppose I give you 1 crore for a year, you will be paying me, say, something around 10 lakhs per month back, and that 10 lakhs per month back is directly given to the lending partner. So I, as a fintech, won't have any role to play in taking back the money. I only would be charging a one-time processing fee, and I will not be taking a cut on the interest. This is the general business model. It might differ from company to company.
Fair enough. Got it. So, just last question before we proceed to the next segment. How do you get in touch with these limited partners? So, is it through, let's say, your personal network, or are there any ways? For example, a person who actually wants to get in touch with these partners. I know it will be sort of going against your entire business, but still, for a startup founder, I want to directly approach these partners. Is there any let's say shortcut or to do that, or is it always or most likely through these debt financing companies?
It's so just to clarify your question, you mean how to onboard these lending partners on your
How
platform?
to directly upload? No, not on board. How to directly approach them bypassing?
Okay, by passing a fintech, you can directly go and apply to their website. They offer loans,
Okay.
and it's not an issue. The issue generally is that the turnaround period is longer.
Okay.
They will not be based upon your financials. Might not be willing to offer you the same amount that we might be able to negotiate for you. And it's a lot about what relationship you have. So we have a better relationship with the lending partner, say. So the lending partner in that case might be able to negotiate a better deal for them.
Got it.
So it's not about having a very stringent rule. There is no rule per se in lending. So I, as a bank, might be willing to lend you 10 lakhs, and some other bank, say bank B, might lend you 15 lakhs. So it depends upon what risk appetite do I have or that other bank has, and how they perceive value in your company.
Got it. So this was indirectly me asking you the USP of your business model. So
Right.
fair enough.
Right.
Got it.
See, the other thing is that why anybody can't start a new company, new fintech in this domain, is because they need money for FLDG. So you'll need good amount of funding to do FLDG lending, and because you're sharing the risk, right?
Right.
And if you're just making a website, making a platform, and asking bank, come on my platform, I will lend,
Right.
it's not feasible because bank is not getting any benefit around shared risk, and it's even difficult for you to do the credit rating and everything.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, so pretty much the last segment of this episode, first episode. The viewers who are watching us, they might be interested in actually starting or maybe joining such kind of firms. So in terms of let's have a checklist in terms of certain qualitative, quantitative skills which maybe you possessed and that's why you were able to get and actually do well in this career. So what would that list tentatively be, and what would be the next few steps for our viewers?
Right. So let's start with the hard skills or the study topics that you need to cover. Number one would be macroeconomics. You need to have a good grasp of how interest rates work, how the repo rate, RBI, entire economy, entire financial intermediation market works.
Right. So I think that's precisely what Garima ma'am covered for us in term two.
Definitely, definitely, that was really helpful.
Right.
And once you have the basic grasp of macroeconomics, because I remember I was asked this question in an interview and it really helped me. So that is one thing. The other thing will be a decent enough understanding of financial statements. I would not say you have to be an expert and you have to create financial statements, but you at least need to have the basic know how to analyze the financial statements.
Okay.
So financial statements, basic accounting, macroeconomics, and along with that, some sort of corporate finance understanding around risk-free rate, market risk premium, all these concepts would be helpful. Now, talking about the soft skills that you need to have, one is definitely good communication and articulation and you also need to be good at convincing because when you're talking to a client, you can't just say that like we will provide you essentially the same thing that our competitor will provide. No, you have to sell yourself that whatever we are offering is best in the market. And you have to pretty much convince the client about the same thing. So you need to be good with communication. You need to be very articulate, very sharp while you talk to the client. And it also depends upon which role are you particularly targeting. Some roles are very investment analysis heavy, so they don't actually talk to the clients. Some roles are a mix of basic financial analysis and talking to the client. Say maybe a founder's office type of a role. And at the same time, some roles might be completely talking to the client and not having maybe any knowledge apart from the very superficial debt financing instrument knowledge. So it really depends.
So I think you've given us a very holistic list of a checklist for all our viewers who actually want to enter in this field. So we started with the types of debt financing we have. We bifurcated it, tried to use the VC approach, but eventually failed. Then we went through your corporate journey and how did you land up into this job and how did you analyze these companies, some deals which you were able to crack versus you were not able to crack and the reasons behind it, and post which we understood the post-transactional process. And now we just discussed some soft and hard skills which candidates would be needed to join this particular industry. I think that is a pretty insightful, detailed, and simple conversation which we tried to have. And I think at Masters Union we have a lot more diverse range of individuals. And that is my end goal, to bring people, intelligent people like Shashwat here on board. Record content with them and try to help our viewers across my MBA journey, whatever all of us can do together. Thank you, Shashwat, for giving me your valuable time and helping our audience understand this particular industry so well. Any last words which you will have, and I would love you to face the camera and speak it out.
Right, so essentially it's been 6 months since I stopped working and I joined my full-time MBA, and this podcast has been a revision for me as well. So I forgot what all I used to analyze, and like as Smith was asking me questions, I was able to think from that the founder's office guy perspective, what all were the things that I was analyzing. So it really helped me as well, and I really enjoyed this podcast.
Okay, I hope it helps you in your interview preparation then.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Smith.
Thanks.
Hi.